lovely people, my name is Emma and today I'm bringing you a 360 book review where I talk about a book for 360 seconds and hope to give you a full view of everything about it. Today we're going to be talking about the non-fiction book Witches by Tracy Broman. So this is a history book that is looking at the witch hunt, but a very specific instance of the witch hunt, which is to do with James I. This was in the 1600s and happened in Belvoir Castle and involved the Flowers family and the rich aristocracy there who accused them of witchcraft when their children fell very violently ill. Tracy Broman is a historian, which I think is excellent when it comes to reading history books. There is a trend when talking about witches in non-fiction to focus a lot on kind of the feminist rhetoric around the witch hunts. And one thing that I really appreciated about this book was that Tracy Broman was very good at giving a fully nuanced view of the varying and huge range of factors that impacted why the witch hunt sprung up, both in this particular instance, but also in the numerous other times in quite a short time period that witch hunts and kind of the moral panic around witchcraft became big, not only in the UK but also in Europe in general, and then across the pond in the States, because there are a lot of different things that impact why this would become such a craze over very specific periods of time. And this book is very good at not trying to kind of make a very grand statement of this is this one particular thing. So that's something that I really appreciated. I like my non-fiction to be heavily nuanced, and Tracy Broman has a really strong handle on not just the particular topic that she's talking about here, but the general macro picture. So this book does focus on the Belvoir Castle case, but it uses it as a jumping off point to talk about, like we're saying, all the other things that are happening in general. And that for me is my favorite kind of non-fiction, my favorite kind of history non-fiction. The kind of micro aspect of really focusing on this individual case means that it's a lot easier to keep with kind of the name straight in your head and the different dates, and it gives you a really nice timeline to be working with. But then it uses those points to jump off and talk about other instances of witch hunting and also like what was likely to happen around the time. So for example, when it talks about the trial section of it in particular, it can then jump off and talk about what were trials like in general, what were trials and specifically for witchcraft like in general, and what were the conditions like for women in these prisons and how do they compare to other prison situations. So you're getting a really comprehensive view of not only this particular instance but witchcraft in general, and also how that played into the general overarching like societal picture of what was happening in the country at the time and like more globally at the time. Because if you just describe, for example, like the terrible conditions that the women were kept in, you don't know, if you don't have a huge background in history, whether that was like a standardized thing or not. So it's really helpful for Tracy Broman to put in this information to tell you actually these women were treated really appallingly even for standards of the time, rather than just being like, oh well this is bad but maybe that's what it was like for everyone. I do think Tracy Broman has a very concise and very clear writing style. At no point did I feel particularly lost. It got a little bit boring in the middle, but it kind of picked its way up at the end. The book at the back hints to this big conspiracy that I didn't personally find particularly compelling. I don't think it needed that wow factor on the back, and I think the blurb slightly missells it because I didn't really get any big conspiracy vibe at the end. So if you go into it reading the blurb expecting that, I personally didn't find it. Also, one thing that I really appreciated is it's not particularly long, which is really nice in non-fiction. The font is a little bit small, which might help to condense the size down a bit, but it doesn't have a ridiculous number of notes at the back either. Generally what you're looking at is what you're going to get as a reading experience, and like with so many of these history books, there are some really nice pictures in the middle that give you examples of artwork at the time to kind of illustrate the prevalence of the concern of witchcraft sort of on the forefront of society in general across the different classes as such. The general argument of this book is mainly looking at the tension between Catholics and Protestants in the UK, especially towards the end of the Tudor reign. So James I came after Elizabeth I, and there was a constant bouncing back between Protestants and Catholics that happened sort of the kings and queens just before her, because this is coming right on the heels of the break of England away from the Catholic Church due to Henry VIII and him deciding to start basically his own new church so that he could divorce his wife. So it's looking at the various sort of ripple effects of that and how the persecution of Catholics and the move away in a societal kind of level away from very ritualized styles of religion into something that was a little bit more clean and a little bit more sparse, then meant that the line between what counted as sort of a religious ritual and what counted as a spell or like devil worship became a lot thinner. That meant that a lot of women who were sort of local medicine women came under fire and then were more likely to be accused of witchcraft. It's also trying to make the argument that this wasn't specifically a drive for men to attack women. So we're not looking at this from a feminist lens, and it's very keen to try and get rid of that argument. And instead, basically, it was a way that local communities could attack outsiders, and then the patriarchy, which was naturally in power anyway, could use that to abuse that, but not specifically that being the main focal point. I'm hoping that made sense. Tracy Broman has a huge back catalogue, which I definitely want to check out now. She's probably most well known for Elizabeth's Women, which is looking at the various women around Elizabeth's court that helped keep her in power. But I think that this is a great place to start if you're interested in the witch hunts in general and would like to know a little bit more about the various factors that led into it. And it's also helpful around the spooky season, which is always good fun. So that is it from me. I hope you have a wonderful reading week, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye!